Hey, what's up guys? Ryan here from ExtremeTerrain, and today I'm here with a Teraflex 1.5-inch Sport ST1 suspension lift kit fitting your 2018 and up Jeep Wrangler 4-door JL. Now this is going to be for the JL owner that is looking for an affordable and easy to install option to gain them some additional ground clearance. This is reasonably priced as far as these spacer lift kits go, making it an excellent option for the enthusiast that is on a budget. Now when we're talking lift kits, you basically have two different types. You're going to have a full suspension lift kit. It's going to have springs and shocks, and you're going to have a spacer lift kit. Full suspension kits are going to cost you a lot more money. They're going to change up the ride quality, and there's something that you simply do not want to cheap out on. Spacer lift kits are a low-cost option that is going to gain you that additional ground clearance, increasing the capability of your Jeep, allowing you to run larger tires, and they're great for those of you not looking to spend very much money on a lift kit, or those of you that want to upgrade in the future to a full-blown lift kit and want to save up money for that. Now adding a lift kit to your vehicle, of course, is going to give you that additional ground clearance. It's going to give you more tire defender clearance. That's going to allow you to fit larger tires, and with this kit you can fit up to a 35-inch tire. And this kit comes with bump stops, which is going to keep those tires from running into your fenders and contacting them during moments of extreme articulation. Now when installing this kit, Teraflex recommends aftermarket wheels with a back spacing of 4.5 inches, and if you're using those stock wheels, you want a spacer, an adapter that's going to space that out at least 1.5 inches. Now pricing for this kit is going to come in right around $260, which I think is very reasonable and a great option. You're getting a high quality kit directly from Teraflex, and they're one of the best names in the business. Now as far as installation goes, I am going to give this a pretty strong 3 out of 3 since we are dealing with the suspension system and supporting our Jeep up in the air. But you can expect this to take you about 4 hours, and you can do all of this just using basic hand tools. Now with that being said, let's hop into the install. Tools that we use for this install: 3/8 drive impact, 1/2-inch drive torque wrench, 18mm wrench, 17mm wrench, 22mm socket, 21mm socket, 18mm socket, 15mm socket, 14mm socket, a shallow 18mm socket, 13mm socket, 1/2-inch drive socket extension, 3/8 drive socket extensions, 1/2-inch drive impact, a dead blow hammer, a prying tool, pliers, 3/8 drive ratchet, and some rust-busting lubricant. Other useful tools: a ratchet strap and a pair of gloves. This is a relatively easy install as far as these lift kits go, since we're just adding spacers on top of our coils, and of course we're adding taller bump stops. That way you can add larger tires. You won't have to risk them running into your fenders. Now we have our Jeep up on the lift. It's already set up. We already have our wheels and tires pulled off. You don't necessarily have to do this on a lift. It makes it a lot easier, but you can do this on the ground. If you're doing it on the ground, you just need a series of pole jacks to support the body, and you need a floor jack to support the axle. So with that being said, we're going to take our trusty pole jacks, we're going to support the axle and start taking stuff apart. All right, so when supporting the axle, we want to support both sides. You can go right here by the end of the axle at the steering knuckle, and we'll just raise our pole jacks up so it sits on the tube. That way we can hold both sides. So we're gonna just twist them up, compress the suspension just a little bit, and then we can start to take some of this stuff apart. So while we're under here, the first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna disconnect some of these lines. So right here we have our axle disconnect. We need to disconnect that not only from this module here, but we need to disconnect it from this flange up here and our upper control arm. Now to do this, all we're going to do is pry that little white tab out. So once we get that to pry out just like that, you can press down on that tab, and that's going to allow you to disconnect it. Now we're going to go back here. All we need is a pry tool or a flathead screwdriver, and you can just pry this little section out. That, and then we'll free it up from the control arm. Now to get a little more length out of our ABS and brake line, we're going to come here to the outside of our control arm. You're going to have a nut here and a bracket. Use a 15mm socket to get this nut off. Once you get this one off, you can do the same thing on the other side. So next we're going to disconnect our track bar where it meets the axle. Now ideally you want to do this on the ground before you lift the vehicle up. Makes it a lot easier to get this bolt out. However, we're going to do it with it in the air. You need a 21mm socket to get that bolt out, and there's a flag nut on the back, so you won't need a tool for that. So next thing we're gonna do is disconnect our axle vent tube that's right here over on the driver's side of our actual center section. So all you need is a pair of pliers to squeeze this little clamp and that'll pull off. Another thing I wanna mention, if you have a Rubicon model, you're gonna have a locker disconnect on this housing, so you'll need to unplug that as well. So we squeeze at a clamp, we slide the clamp back. Next, we're going to disconnect our sway bar end links. You'll need an 18mm socket and an 18mm wrench. And you want to save this hardware because all this stuff's going back together. Next, we're going to go over to the passenger side. Same thing, we're going to take out this bottom bolt. Now there's a flag nut on the back side, so you don't need a tool. Same 18mm socket. So the last thing that is limiting us from dropping our axle down and getting these springs out is going to be our shock. So what we're going to do is remove this bottom bolt at the bottom of the shock where it meets the axle. You need an 18mm wrench and a socket to get that out. Now if it is a little tough to get out, you may need to compress your suspension a little bit to get that bolt to free up. So I'll go over to the other side and we'll do the same thing. So at this point in time, we're ready to drop our axle and get these springs out. And one thing that I'd like to point out is just take your sway bar end links, push them up like this against that, and then just push your sway bar up and out of the way. It's gonna make it a lot easier to get this spring out when we drop the axle. Now if you have it on a lift, you can just raise the lift up while the axle is sitting on your pole jacks, and that's gonna drop that suspension. Or if you have your axle on a floor jack, then you can just lower that down and loosen up these springs. So we're gonna raise the lift up, try to get these springs loose, and then we'll pull them out. So to get the spring out, what we're gonna do is pull it off of the bottom seat. And we'll go ahead and just weave this on down. Now once you get the spring out, we wanna get this isolator out as well, because our spacer is going to sit on top of this. So after that, we're gonna pull our bump stop off. So this is just wiggle and turn this as you pull this down. So we'll go over to the other side, we'll do that same thing. It's gonna be a lot easier on the driver's side because you don't have that drag link in the way. We'll pull this isolator off, we'll wanna keep that, and then we'll get this bump stop out. So at this point in time, we're ready to start putting the front end back together. Now the first thing we're gonna start with is putting this brand new bump stop in. I wanna point out that there are two different bump stops. You're gonna have this short little stubby one. This one's for the back, and you're gonna have this long skinny one that's gonna be the front. So we'll toss that one. We're gonna start with our front one, and all we're gonna do is just lube this edge up with any kind of slippery substance, and we're just gonna pop that back up into that seat. So after you get the bump stop in, the next thing we're gonna do is install our spacer, our isolator, and our coil spring. Now, like I said, the spacer is gonna go on top of the isolator. So you can see on the back of this, there's these two little alignment pins. These are actually gonna fit into this spacer. And then on top of that spacer, you're gonna have these two little alignment pins as well. So when you put this up into that spring bucket, you're gonna line those pins up. You'll feel it seat, and then we'll put our spring back up in there. So then we'll put our spring back in and get it on the bottom seat. Now on the bottom of the coil, you're gonna have a pigtail stop. You wanna make sure that that's lined up with your spring. And then once we lower this down, we wanna make sure that these pins up here line up in that spring bucket as well. So then we'll switch over to the other side and do that same exact thing. So I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. You wanna line both of those up. You can see how they mesh very nicely. Go up over our bump stop, and then you just wanna spin this thing until you feel it drop in. So we'll put our spring back in, seat that on the bottom. And after you get that spring in, you wanna make sure that this pigtail stops on this little stop. So at this point in time, we're gonna lower our vehicle down. Try to compress these springs and get it low enough that we can get these shocks back in. So at this point in time, we're gonna reinstall our shocks. Now these shocks do have a little bit of resistance, so you're gonna need to pull down on them and get this to line up, these two holes. We'll install the nut on the back side, and then we can tighten it up as well. So to tighten it up, we're gonna use an 18mm wrench, 18mm socket, and once you get it all tightened up, you can torque it to 56 foot-pounds. And then while we're here, we can put this brake line bracket back on, put that nut back on, and then use that 15mm socket to tighten that nut down. So then you can go onto the other side and do that same exact thing. Get our two 18s, tighten it up. And once again, torque it to 56 foot-pounds. And same thing, while we're here, we get that bracket installed. So after your shocks are connected, we can take it off with a pole jack. So we'll go ahead and lift our Jeep up. So the next thing we're gonna do while we're under here, we're gonna plug back in our axle disconnect. So we can push this back into the control arm, push this into the back of our disconnect housing. Then we can plug this back in. Once you plug it back in, you hear a click, you wanna push that white tab back in, and that's gonna lock it in. Can't come undone all by itself. So next thing we're gonna do is reattach our sway bar end links. So you wanna swing those down, pull your sway bar down, and then we're just gonna line them up with these holes, reinstall those factory bolts. So to tighten these up, we're gonna use an 18mm wrench and an 18mm socket. Once you get them tight, you wanna torque them to 69 foot-pounds. All right, we'll go over to the other side and do that same exact thing. Just swing that sway bar end link down. So to tighten this up, same thing, 18mm. You're gonna have that flag nut on the back, so you don't need to hold that or do anything. And then torque it to 69 foot-pounds. So the last thing we have to do on the front is reconnect our track bar. Now there's two ways that you can do this. You can throw the wheels and tires back on, drop the whole vehicle down on the ground, and that way you can use the weight of the body and the steering wheel. That's gonna shift that axle over and help you line up that bolt hole. Or you can use a ratchet strap. I have it here on the lift, and what I'm gonna do is show you exactly how to use a ratchet strap while it's in the air to pull the axle. What we're gonna do is just pull the axle over towards the driver's side. That's gonna line that hole up for us, then we'll put that factory bolt back in. So the first thing I'm gonna do is come over here to the frame on the driver's side. There's a big old opening, so I'm just gonna hook onto that, and then that way I can drag this other end over here, and you just wanna find a good spot. Now one thing you wanna keep in mind is that we don't get in the way of the track bar or the track bar bolt. So there's a little ledge right here on the bottom that I'm gonna hook onto, and all I'm gonna do is just tighten up this ratchet strap, get it in place. Once you get it in place, you can just start cranking, and you'll see the axle shift over, and then that hole will line up. So like I said, once you get this hole to line up, since we got it lined up, we're gonna put that factory bolt back through. And then of course you wanna install that flag nut on the back side. After that, you can use that 21mm to tighten up. Now ideally you want to tighten this up with the vehicle on the ground, that way that this bushing inside of here is in a relaxed position. So after you get the track bar bolt in and tightened up, what you're gonna do is torque this down. Torque specs are a little weird. You want to torque it to 52 foot-pounds of torque, and then you want to torque that, tighten it up another 115 degrees with a torque wrench. So now we're all done on the front. We're going to move here to the back before we support our axle with pole jacks, start taking stuff apart. We're going to loosen up some of these lines that we have. First thing I want to point out is this right here. This is your brake and ABS line, and behind this sway bar link, you're going to see a little bracket. That bracket, we need to remove that bolt. That's going to give us plenty of slack to drop this axle down when we actually get to it. So we're going to use a 13mm socket on an extension. We'll go ahead and take that bolt out, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. So once you get that bolt out, if you think there's a chance that you might misplace it, you can always move that bracket aside. Go ahead and reinstall that bolt, just for safekeeping. So we'll go to the other side, do the same thing. Next, we're going to disconnect our axle vent tube. Same thing as the front. All we're going to do is just squeeze that clip. Pull that tube up and off, and then we can just let that dangle. Next, we're going to go underneath of the Jeep above our fill tube for our gas tank. You're going to see this little bracket. This is actually what holds the e-brake lines up. Now, Teraflex wants us to take this bracket off and keep it off. So we're going to use a 13mm socket on an extension, and we'll go ahead and take that bracket off. This is going to give us a little more drop in our e-brake lines and our axle. So next thing we're going to do, we're going to take our trusty pole jack. We're going to support our axle because it's time to take out the track bar bolt. So same thing, we want to support the axle on both sides. So we're going to take this bolt out where the track bar meets the axle. Same thing as the front, we're going to use a 21mm socket on an extension, and there's a flag nut on the back, so we don't need a tool for that. So the next one we're going to do two things on this side. We're going to disconnect our sway bar end link, which is right down here at the axle. We're also going to disconnect the bottom of our shock right here. Both of them are going to be 18, so we're going to use an 18mm wrench and an 18mm socket to get these out. All right, so once you get that done, you're going to go over and do the same exact thing on the other side. All right, so now that we have everything disconnected, what we're gonna do is just raise our Jeep up off of the axles. That way it's gonna free up the springs and we can pull those out. So the same thing as the front, we're gonna pull the spring up and off that bottom seat. Once we get that out, we're gonna pull that out. We're also gonna pull it out with the isolator because that's just gonna come out. And while we're over here, we're gonna get our bump stop out as well. So same thing as the front, you're just gonna pull and twist that, and this should pop right out. Next, we're gonna do our driver's side. Now this side can be a little tricky just because we have our track bar bracket back here. However, if you lower it down enough, it should come right out. Same thing, make sure to get that isolator out of there. Next, yank that other bump stop out. So at this point in time, we have the whole thing torn down, so we're gonna start with the reassembly. First thing we're gonna do, just like the front, we're gonna install our bump stops. Now these are the only bump stops you have left in the kit, and same thing, you wanna lube up that edge, that way they just right in there. So we're gonna go ahead and press these up in the hole. Next, we're gonna install our upper spacer. Now this one's actually gonna get bolted in, so we have this little plate with a slot in it. This is actually gonna sit on top of here. So we're just gonna go ahead and slide that into place. Now you're gonna get a bolt in this kit. It's a rather long bolt, and that washer, the gold washer they provide you, is gonna slide onto there. What we need to do So we need to get that to sit on top of that plate just like that. While that bolt is hanging there, we're going to slide our new spacer on. Now you want this little indented end to face upward, so this end's going to face down. And the same with the front, you have this little alignment, and that's going to fit in this little hole right there. So you want to make sure that when you tighten it up, that is sitting in there. So I'm going to go ahead and take this. To do that, we're going to grab the nut they provide us, and we're going to thread that on. So after you get this installed, we're going to tighten this up. Now, we're going to use a 17mm wrench to hold the bolt head up top. We're going to use a 14mm socket to tighten this nut up. When you tighten it up, you need to make sure that this little alignment pin on the backside actually goes into that hole. So we're going to take our time tightening this up. So yeah, ideally it would be a good idea to have someone hold this spacer in place while you tighten this up. So I got it pretty close. We're going to go ahead and tighten this down, lock it in place. So at this point in time, we're going to reinstall our spring and our isolator. Now there's two things I want to point out. The top of this isolator has a little alignment pin right here. This is going to go in the hole that's actually in this spacer. The next thing I want to point out is there's a stop right here. So you want to make sure that you match that pigtail up on the end of the spring with that stop. So we're going to go ahead over here, over the track bar, up into the axle. We want to get that lined up right there. And then same thing. When we go to raise this axle back up, you just want to make sure that that little alignment on the top of the isolator goes in that. All right, so we'll go over to the other side. We're going to do all of those same things. So same thing, I'm going to get a second set of hands to hold this in place, make it a little easier. So we want to spin that until we get it to drop in place. You can see that it won't rotate anymore. Then we use that 17mm wrench up top and 14mm socket. Try to get this thing all buttoned up. All right, so now we're going to put our spring in with our isolator. Remember, we're going to line up that little pigtail with the stop on there, and of course we have that little dowel alignment section up there. So now that we got the springs in, the next thing of course is to reattach our shocks. Now this is pretty hard to do. These shocks want to retract up into themselves, and it's very hard to pull these down, line that hole up, and get that bolt in. So if you want to save this for last, it would be a good idea to throw your wheels and tires back on and actually use the weight of the vehicle to push it down and then just get that bolt in when it's on the ground. However, I'm going to get it in while it's up here so you guys see exactly what I'm doing. So after you get that bolt in, we're going to tighten it up using an 18mm wrench and socket. After you get it tightened up, you can torque it down to 56 foot-pounds. So after we get our shock in, and while we're over here, we're going to reattach our sway bar end link. Now if you've confused these two bolts here, the sway bar end link is going to have a larger flat washer on the head, and the shock bolt is going to be longer than the sway bar end link bolt. But once again, we're just going to push this up in the air, line that hole up. Bolt's going to go from the inside out, and then we'll put that nut on there. Then we'll take those same 18mm and we'll tighten that up. Once you tighten it up, you can torque it to 69 foot-pounds. Next, we'll install our brake line bracket over here. Slide that back over, reinstall that factory bolt. Once you get that factory bolt in, we'll use a 13mm socket on an extension to tighten that back up. So So I'll go ahead and move over to the passenger side, and then we'll do that same thing starting with the shock. And you can go ahead and tighten it up and torque it down. Then we'll reconnect our vent tube. So at this point in time, I'm going to ditch my pole jacks. The last thing that we have to do is get that track bar in. Now you can see that that hole is a little off, so you can do the same thing that I told you in the front. Throw your wheels and tires back on, drop it on the ground. Most likely that hole is going to line up. I'm going to do it in the air with a ratchet strap, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So over here on the side of the frame, you just want to find a good spot. Looks like right here above the track bar bracket, we have a nice little hole that both goes through the bracket and the frame. So my end of my ratchet strap is going to go right in there. So then to take the other end of the ratchet strap, I'm going to hook over here onto this track bar bracket. That's one of the nice things about the JL. It has a very large rear track bar bracket. It has plenty of places to grab onto. This is going to give me a nice straight line. It's not going to mess with the track bar at all when I go to crank this thing down. What we're going to do is just get this to start ratcheting, and all we need to do is just bring that axle over ever so slightly. So it looks like that. It's pretty much lined up right there, so we can go ahead and reinstall our bolt. So once you get that hole to line up, we're just going to put that bolt back in, try to feed it all the way out to the backside, and then we're going to install that flag nut. So once again, you want to get that threaded in by your hand, that way we don't cross any threads. And the same goes for the rear track bar. Ideally, you want to tighten this with the weight of the vehicle on the ground. That way this rubber bushing inside is in a relaxed state at ride height. After you do that, you're going to take a 21mm socket, and we're going to go ahead and tighten that up. So once you tighten that bolt, you're going to torque it down to 74 foot-pounds, and then you're going to torque it another 60 degrees. However, that's basically going to wrap it up for the installation. I'm going to get these pole jacks out of here and this ratchet strap. Now that we have this kit completely installed, you want to throw your wheels and tires back on, torque those lug nuts down with that 22mm to factory specs, and after that you want to go get an alignment. However, that's going to wrap it up for my review and install. For more videos and products like this, check us out at ExtremeTerrain.com.